Most companies have been scammed by 17 people already. And one of the biggest things that I see, so many people are like, yeah, we only work with dentists. And my first question to them is, when were you last at a dentist conference? Literally 99.9% of companies operate the exact same way. And the thing is, if you learn to understand how other people think, and you understand why they make the choices they make, you become a lot more effective.
Once you're actually someone very responsible, dedicated person, now it's time to onboard them to the company. How would you start with that?
Onboarding is critically important, so there's a couple of key things. Number one.
Nice to meet you, finally.
Fantastic to meet you once again.
Oh, pleasure. We actually met in Kutaisi, in Korai's mastermind. And I found your, discussing SOPs, delegation, the management of the company, something that many search marketers or marketers really don't have a clue of the science behind it or the skills behind it. And I always had this idea in my mind that in order to be a great SEO, you need to have great technical skills. But that doesn't mean you will be a successful SEO. And I've seen it over and over again. The richest people in search marketing or any sort of a marketing vendor, either SaaS company, lead generation company, they have no technical skills whatsoever.
Yep.
And I come to realize that if you are someone who actually lacks managerial skills or have a personality of, let's say, chaotic personality, like very, very open personality, not able to manage, you'll end up essentially destroying the company in a short time just because you don't know how to manage it. But what I was actually hearing from you, I was like, wow, it's someone's here to save agencies. And I really respected that. And then the thing I want to ask you is, let's say you're an SEO, a technical SEO person, like a complete nerd. I don't like nerds so much, although I believe, technically speaking, they're good people, but at the same time, you need to be a little bit more not nerdy, essentially, to have some skills, to be able to speak to someone, to be able to have a conversation, to be able to hit the gym and not to get overweight or skinny. You want to have a good health. But if you're a nerd, essentially, someone making, working in-house in a company with an average salary or is a dependent sort of independent freelancer who works on Upwork and wants to step up the game to enter, let's say, the agency world and wants to build a team and wants to make the company profitable, how would you start going about it as the first initial step?
Yeah.
Is that the sales or is that you're going to set up the SOPs? How would you actually do it?
So just to hit on some of the first points you say, right? Yes, many SEOs are not great managers, but most people aren't great managers.
Yeah.
The thing is, management is a skill, just like SEO, just like sales, just like marketing, just like anything else. The thing is, if you're serious about building a company or if you're serious about advancing your career within a business, management is a skill to learn, right? So I've had so many SEO come to me and say, oh, I don't know how to manage, I can't manage, I just want to hire someone to do it. And there's a big difference. If you don't want to learn it, that's one thing. But I've had people like Matt Diggity come to me and say those exact words. And 9 months later, he said, I don't want to do SEO anymore. Because here's the thing. People are doing SEO because they know how to do it. Just like salespeople are doing sales because they know how to do it. Just because you're a great sales guy doesn't make you a great manager. Just because you're a great SEO doesn't make you a great manager. But if you can learn to be a great sales guy, or if you can learn to be a great SEO, you can learn how to be a great manager.
Yeah.
Now you have to make the choice to invest in it. And the whole thing for me is if you make the choice to build a business, if you make the choice to start a company, in my opinion, you need to make the choice to learn how to manage. You need to make the choice of learning business. Because here's the thing, if you start a business and you just do SEO, if you don't learn how to run a business, like you're never going to succeed. Or you're never going to be profitable, or you're never going to make a lot of money. Now, if your goal is to just do SEO, I mean, yeah, you can do that, right? But you can do that as a freelancer, you can do that in many different ways. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I'm not saying everyone have to go and start an SEO company. Definitely not, right? But if you make the choice and say, I want to start an agency, I want to build an SEO company, if you do that, you have to do yourself the favor of starting to learn some of the skills that it takes to succeed. And one of the biggest things for most SEOs is communication skills.
Yeah.
Right? When I was 18 years old, I did not communicate like I communicate today. Yeah. I did not.
I do believe that. Also, as search marketers, we have a tendency to care so much about, let's say, reputation management. Mm-hmm. You meet someone online, seems to be a very, very conservative person, how they talk. Mm-hmm. Then you meet them in person, you're like, oh my God, he's out of his mind.
You're talking about James Dooley again, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. The thing is, I think people would actually appreciate people who actually show who they are.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong about it now with let's say, the U.S. election. I think Trump was chosen because he was saying things that it really connected to people individually.
Yeah.
And I think that's the direction the world is, moving towards. It has moved towards, let's say, the old school media that everything you say was essentially controlled, or at least monitored in some way, though. And then now we're going towards a direction that essentially, people love genuine comments about, and they don't really care about who you are as a person, as long as you really show who you are. But let's say there should be a red line that you shouldn't cross.
Sure.
Let's start with essentially many SEOs. They tend to have, let's say, very open personalities. Mm-hmm. And I think a couple of years ago I was reading some studies on trade openness as a personality trait versus the trait conscientiousness, orderliness, and also being organized person, essentially. How do you think SEOs can, by learning management, to be actually better managers when their personality is just too open?
I don't think there's it's not right or wrong being open. So we all have a certain personality, mm-hmm. right? A lot of the time, the key thing is learning how to work with what you have, mm-hmm. right? We all have certain strengths and weaknesses. And the thing is, every strength is a weakness.
Yeah.
For example, being very direct is often a strength.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a weakness.
Yeah.
Being incredibly smart, the highest IQ people in the world, it's a benefit in many occasions.
Yes.
But let me promise you one thing. The highest IQ people are not the one making the most money. So, again, every strength is a weakness at the same time. Right?
Exactly.
And this is the thing. So, when it comes to leadership and management, the key thing is whatever your traits are, what you gotta learn and the things that are most valuable to you is learning how to understand yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? As we grow up, we go through a phases of getting to know ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the most important things, right? Go into framework. I utilize a framework called DISC, which is very behavioral, so it's similar to what you studied. But fundamentally, it's getting to know yourself. And the second is getting to know people that are different from you. Yeah. We all have this thing in our mind sometimes where we're like, why would anyone do that?
Yeah.
Right? And we don't understand why someone else would do something. But it's because the way their brain functions is just different from ours.
Exactly. Everyone's different.
It's not right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just different. And the thing is, if you learn to understand how other people think, and you understand why they make the choices they make, you become a lot more effective, both as a human being, but particularly as a manager. As a manager, if you understand why your people are doing what they're doing, you become way better at managing them, right? And that's the essence. And the same thing, people are motivated by different things. People communicate in different ways, right? Some people absolutely love writing a wall of text.
Yeah.
Some people send you one-line emails.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people don't write emails at all, and some people don't read them at all, right? And here's the thing, there's nothing right or wrong with it. It's just different. And the essence of leadership and the essence of management, from my point of view, is very simple about how do you learn to be effective with people. So when I communicate to you, I communicate in a different way than if I communicate to James Dooley.
Absolutely.
Because you are two very different people.
Yeah.
And because of that, you communicate in different ways.
Yeah, I agree. And let's get into, so let's say we have a SEO consultant here with 3 clients. He has a plan to scale up his size of the agency from 3 clients to 15 clients. There will be chaos on the road. So essentially, what are steps he needs to take in order to scale up the agency? Let's start with everything that is necessary, not just the financial wise, but also the structure of the company, how you would actually set up the structure initially. And then what tools or what methodologies you may actually use, essentially similar to, let's say, some like all these front-end and back-end developers or essentially startups. I used to work for a startup 5 years before. Like, everyone's talking about agile, and I didn't understand what it was essentially. What agile was saying was the king, but I really didn't understand it. But essentially, it's a framework as far as I can understand. But for an SEO company, let's say someone is a freelancer, wants to kick things started as soon as possible in order to be an agency. How would you go about this?
So the number one single most important thing is figure out what is your process. Thing is, most SEOs love solving problems. They're like, oh, here's a problem here, here's a problem here, and they love different kind of businesses. The problem is, that's not a business, right? The most successful companies in the world do one thing and they do it really well.
Exactly.
So you need to figure out what is your process. What is, and people think about niching down. When you say niching down, they think of, oh, we only work with e-commerce stores. Well, here's the thing, e-commerce stores are wildly different, right? Like you can't take one strategy from one e-commerce store and give the exact same strategy to another e-commerce store. That does not work, right? So the most important piece of any business is figure out what is your one process. So for example, for my management consulting company, I have a particular management training I do, which is typically about a full day. And I've done that exact training for 800 plus people. And I do the same thing over and over and over again. I can talk about management for months. But I know that this is what's needed. And I know this is the 80-20 of what people need to get it right.
Yeah.
And because of that, I keep doing the same thing over and over and over again because I know it works every single time. Same thing with SEO. It doesn't matter what you pick, but figure out what is the one process that you can do repeatedly over and over and over again that delivers significant value. So when you look in the world of SEO, you'll see that there'll be a lot of link building companies that are quite successful, monetarily at least, right? And the reason is because link building, a lot of them, they do one process. They just figure out, how do we do guest post and how do we sell them? How do we do guest post? How do we sell them? Most SEOs can't scale an agency because they don't figure out what is the one process.
Right, exactly.
So if you say, you don't want to say, we do SEO for all people everywhere. The problem is in the beginning when you're a freelancer, you're like, anyone that need SEO, come to me.
Yeah.
And the problem is the only one that can do it is me.
I think you made a great point, especially if you're starting out. Like the mistake that I see a lot of people make, so they start an agency, they start offering like web design in the beginning, or they start offering PPC in the beginning, when they don't really have a team for it, they don't have the skill set for it, they don't have the SOPs for it, and they're not able to scale up the agency effectively with like 5 people involved and 20 services. I think that's like a very, very, very bad and common mistake that people
But this
make.
is often, again, you'll see there's hundreds of agencies out there that only do
Absolutely,
e-commerce,
yeah.
right? And here's the thing: if you're doing SEO for a WooCommerce store and e-commerce for a Shopify store, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you really want to pick. You want to find a process that you can just repeat again and again and again. And then what you do is you take that process and you split it into pieces. Because what most SEOs try and do, someone like yourself, if you want to start out, you're like, oh, how do I find someone like me who's really smart and can do all the stuff I can do? But here's the thing, if you find someone like you who's really smart and can do all the stuff you can do, they'll do it for themselves,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Or it will take you 4 years to train them, and you don't want to do that. The way you succeed is turning it around and saying, what is the process? And then you break down the process that you pick. You break it down and say, okay, let's take e-commerce as an example, right? You say, okay, what's the first step? Well, every time we got let's say we focus on WooCommerce, e-commerce stores who does a certain kind of site setup or something. Every time we get in a site, we start by doing an audit. And then you can literally break down what are the steps of the audit you do every single time. Here's the thing, you can go out and hire a person who knows very little about SEO to follow a guide on how to do an audit. Oh, is there an SSL certificate? Yes, no. Okay, great. Is the page indexed? Yes, no. Great. And you can literally go down the list of all the things you're checking. And you can train someone who knows nothing about SEO on how to do an audit in a relatively short span of time.
Exactly.
Right? And if you break down your process, everything becomes relatively easy to do as individual steps. And that means you can hire people very quickly to do any of those steps.
And I got a question regarding hiring. So right now my team is very small. I am essentially the sole account manager. I'm responsible for sales. At the same time, also I'm directing the SEO of the company, like actual head of SEO of the company as well. But I do have essentially contractors that I work with on full-time basis. These are usually individuals that I trust deeply. At the beginning, the plan is actually to mentor them, hire them, and let them grow within the agency. And I realized the benefit of, especially for technical team, that doesn't really require like a perfect proficiency in English, because like the world is big. Like now, the internet is here and everything is online, so you have a chance actually to hire people from, for example, I hired someone from Georgia, great dude, or Armenia or Turkey, and I think leveraging these individuals can be really, really beneficial. At the same time, I have a feeling you do need really English-speaking account managers to handle your calls.
If your clients are English and they want to talk to you, you probably do.
Do you? What would you go about this if you wanted to actually set up an agency? Would you be able to recommend to people for their technical teams? Let's say for specialist positions, not client-facing positions, to hire solely, but not entirely, of team of, let's say, folks from different countries or developing countries.
So let me take a step back, right? I think a lot of the time people just look at the cost.
Yeah.
Every time you hire people, it's not about what they cost, it's about the ROI.
Yeah.
If I hire someone for $1,000 that makes me $2,000, great. If I can hire someone for $10,000 that make me $100,000, that's way better. The point is it's not about cheap or expensive, it's about what's the return. So the way I look at workforce is not necessarily about hiring cheap or hiring expensive, but it's about, fundamentally, is where can you find great people?
Exactly. I think it's the value that they can add
It's the
to the
value,
company.
right? So fundamentally, what I believe in communication is one of the most important things. So I would generally hire people that speak the same language. So again, depending if you're from Turkey, well, hire a bunch of Turkish people. Totally okay.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if your client are all in the US, you probably want to have some very, very good English speakers.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
But there's nothing wrong with that. But internally in a company, you generally want to hire people who can communicate effectively with each other.
Yeah.
Because in the end of the day, if you have a developer and SEO who doesn't speak the same language, you're making things more complicated.
I heard a joke on LinkedIn. Someone said, if you're struggling with account management and sales calls, just hire a British guy. No matter what bullshit he tells, it sounds convincing anyway.
And people are always happy with it.
Yeah, like it's crazy. Like whenever like Brits like they speak, it just unbelievable. Like the accent is like sounds like they know what they're talking about. And there are a lot of things involved: the body language, the confidence.
From us, for example, like we hire a large proportion of our staff in South Africa, and that's because it's Western mindset, it's native English,
Yeah.
it's European time zone, so it works for both Europe and North America. But again, you can, in principle, you can find good people anywhere.
Anywhere,
Right.
exactly. Except in the cases of, let's say, sanctioned countries, or when there is a payment issue.
Obviously,
Yeah.
that's correct. And yeah, we actually have staff in some countries sometimes where, not necessarily sanctioned, but there's some countries where it can be difficult sending money in and out and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be a rule breaker, but you don't want to break the law.
I never want to break the law, no.
Exactly. And but essentially, some of the developing countries, though, they're sometimes hit and miss.
No, but here's the thing. You can hire horrible people in the US,
Yeah.
and you can hire horrible people in Iran.
Exactly.
You can hire some great people in Iran, and you can hire some great people in the US.
Exactly.
It's not about the country. Like, you can find great people anywhere on the planet Earth.
The population also makes a big difference. Let's say you do a job posting, I don't know, in I don't want to say real name, a country with a real name.
Sure.
Let's say Wadua, for example. Wadua has a population of 3 billion people. A lot of people apply and they're not even qualified. In order to be able to see who is the actual deal in 3 million applications, you got to put a lot of efforts to find the most professional person. I think have a short list of the candidates, doing the research right, all of this stuff really matters. And I was really surprised with quality of individuals, recent graduates of SEO courses from Pakistan. That was not historically the case, by the way, at all. 5 years ago, there was a lot of spam happening from Pakistan, but the situation has improved. We are seeing more skilled and talented Pakistanis actually entering the market, and they're able to generate great results. And things can change and improve too. And I would blame all of these, let's say, there's a lot of spam happening from developing countries, link spam mostly, or like a scam as well. Lack of, let's say, good mentorship, not having someone.
It's twofold. It's lack of mentorship, but it's also low cost. The thing is, like, when you look at India, there's a lot of these scam call centers.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they exist is because when you pay someone very little money, it's still worthwhile to do all of this stuff.
Exactly. Also, it's not only India. Like,
sure,
even,
but that's an example. Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of countries have scam.
Nigeria very famous for scams, and
I can tell you, in Georgia, a country of Georgia, they have too. They have crypto scammers, and a lot of countries essentially. But the thing is, like, being able to distinguish legitimate experts versus like a fake candidate which looks spammy, terrible English. What would you do in the cases that you have a large number of applications? Do you use any sort of a tool for that, or you manually review the applications.
So what the first thing to start with is the mindset. Recruitment is like sales. You want as many people at the top of your funnel that are qualified as you possibly can. But let's say you put out a job ad and you get 200 people who are actually qualified. You don't want to interview 200 people because you spend the rest of your life doing that.
Yeah.
So what you generally have to think about is that when you look at some of the biggest companies like Google, they have like 7 interviews to get in, 7 rounds of interviews. And the reason is very simple. The harder it is to get a job, the more people appreciate it when they get it. What happens with a lot of small businesses is they're like, oh yeah, we had lunch for 20 minutes and you seem like an alright guy, so now you have a job. The likelihood that you leave very quickly is way higher because it was so easy to get the job. You assume you can get another one just by going to lunch with some random stranger. Right?
Exactly.
Whereas when you actually make the interview process difficult, first of all, you weed out people who are not willing to do what it takes. And the way we typically do that is through testing. So you could do a bunch of interesting tests. You could say, let's say you're hiring an SEO. You could say, well, everything else being equal, someone who types faster is better than someone who types slow.
Yeah.
So if you do a very simple test of saying, well, let's see how fast people type. If you have someone who is typing like this, and you have someone who is typing really fast, if you take 200 candidates and you look at the average, and you say, well, let's remove the bottom 20%, or let's remove the bottom 50%, right? We used to look at the speed of typing. We used to find that a lot of gamers were very, very fast.
Gamers?
Gamers.
My apologies. I've heard gay men.
Gamers.
Yes,
so
gamers.
People who are gaming, because they, when you're using the keyboard for gaming and stuff, you're fast. So they are often way faster typers, right?
Yeah.
We'll do things like language testing. So again, if you're hiring from non-native countries, doing a test in language skills makes sense. But there's a lot of tests you can automate where you say everything else being equal, the people who are best in English, fast typers and whatever, they're probably going to be better than the people who are not.
Yeah.
Right? So you can take 200 qualified people and you can take the top of those from various tests. And one of my favorites is getting people to do a 2-minute video and explain to me why you would be a good fit for this role. And here's the thing. You can't necessarily say someone is good or bad from that, but you can definitely remove some people.
Exactly. If they start speaking nonsense, like they have no vision, like they're talking about how beautiful their cat is, or they seem to be lost.
Right.
Then you're able to distinguish them.
But that's the point. So if you make a whole bunch of tests, and eventually you bring down the numbers, and you can automate all of this, right? Like it's not hard. It's like a sales funnel. So you literally just automate the testing, and then at the end you have a lower number of people. One of my favorite things is, because again, my time is valuable. So my favorite thing is if I have to hire someone, it's getting one of my staff members to first talk with them. So that could be a 15, 20-minute call or whatever. But let's say I have 30 people left. I don't want to interview 30. So I'll get one of my staff members to interview the 30 and tell me which 10 or 15 they think are the best. And everything else being equal, because they're a great staff member, they're likely wanting to work with great people. And if I had to make a pick, I'm sure they will pick some of the better ones. And that way, I end up with maybe 10, 15 people that I end up interviewing.
Any IQ test or personality test?
For some roles, IQ tests could make sense.
Nowadays, people get a little bit offended whenever it comes to IQ because it's not something you can change, modify, although there seems to be some evidence that it decreases by age.
But it's not something that moves significantly.
Exactly.
Right. But the whole thing is, people assume IQ is good. Here's the thing. For most people, a high IQ makes you slower.
Maybe. Possible.
Here's the thing. Slower is sometimes great. If I want a bookkeeper, I want someone who do things right.
Yeah.
I don't care. They check it through 3 times and make absolutely freaking sure it's right. However, for some roles, I want someone who gets stuff done. Right? Like for some roles, it's not about perfection. For sometimes you just need stuff done. That's not the same person. Right?
I remember, I was working in a company, the same company that I mentioned years ago. For a role, they started, like after the initial interview, they started for graphic designer, UX designers, providing a set of questions, how interested they are in traveling or art, and how are do they have the willingness to try new food that they haven't experienced before. And these are essentially, the idea was that there's an aspect of a personality, someone being open, is essentially creativity, is connected to creativity, therefore you can be a better graphic designer. And the results were shocking. The results were shocking. The people who were hired, why had this particular openness metric in the junior role, they had some experience before, actually did a much, much better job than someone who was senior and was hired without a personality test. And I think it can be applied to many, many, many different roles as well. For example,
We use, I mean, for the DISC framework, it's the same thing, right? So what we're utilizing for DISC is, again, physical behaviors. So when you look at creativity, the more a human being smile, the more creative they are. So when you look at the most creative people in this world, they naturally smile nonstop. You and me, we don't smile so much.
No, I'm a simple dude, not a creative one.
We're both simple, but this is the thing. Actually, a lot of the time, the beautiful thing about DISC and what I love about DISC is you can get you can get all the information you need from simply looking at another human being, right? Whereas for a lot of personality tests, like the Big Five, the challenge is you need to get people to take a test first.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, people wouldn't appreciate it early on without meeting them, seeing them, someone coming to say, fill out this 200 questions in the application process. This is taking it a little bit too far. Once I think you did the initial interview, even fine, then you have an opportunity to provide a questionnaire. But I think this is actually a mistake people do. Make this gigantic application with 500 questions, and it's making, like how you said, it's making the top of funnel harder.
Yeah. So the thing is, you want it to be hard to get a job, but you don't want, again, it's not fair to get people to spend 10 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going through an application, right? Like sometimes we get to a point where we do test jobs for people and then we pay them, right? But the thing is, when you give people small tasks, I really love the concept because something like a typing test literally takes you 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? And the whole thing is that if you're not willing to spend 2 minutes to continue with this application, you're probably not interested enough in this job. Right? So one of the big things for me is that we're very keen on hiring people who really want to work with us. Right? There's a lot of people who want a job because we all need to put food on the table, but we're very eager to find people who are eager to work with us. And when you're very eager to work with a specific company or in a specific situation, then you're typically in a situation where you're willing to put in some effort. Right?
Absolutely.
But again, as you say, there's a limit.
Yeah, true that. And let's start with the process. So someone does the test, does the the personality stuff, the checking the CV, making sure the person is genuine, honest. He doesn't show up late to the meeting. At least it's proven that he's someone who takes things very seriously in a responsible manner. I don't appreciate someone, in the first interview process being late by 15 minutes without actually having a reason behind it.
We typically do a minimum of 2 interviews with all people.
Absolutely.
Just to make sure they can show up on time twice.
Yeah. Because if you cannot manage to get in the first interview, that's like the biggest red flag. And I think showing that you're a responsible person in the beginning. Back in the day, when 5 years ago, I was wearing suits in an interview process, and I was a big fan of suits for a long time. Even now, I think I occasionally wear suits as well, and I would just to show, I can for the reason why I joined this interview, because I respect your company. I do appreciate your company, and I'm willing to put my time and effort, and I'm a responsible person, so I'm wearing a suit. Like, it's essentially a sign of respect that you have respect to the company, and you're a dedicated person who's willing to put in the work to get the job done, hopefully to get hired. And people really like that. And someone told me you're actually the first guy who showed up to an interview with a suit. And it was like shocking that many people really don't put in the effort or the work just to get hired in the beginning. You know,
It's like sales. Here's the thing.
yeah,
Interviewing is like sales. If you
Exactly.
don't want to put in the work, if you don't want to put in the effort, you're very unlikely to get hired.
exactly.
And it's so easy to sit around and say, oh, no one's hiring, I can't get a job, it's impossible, blah, 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 right? But this is the difference between great people and people who have less success.
Exactly. And then, so once you actually someone did a great job, you like him, personality is okay, very responsible, dedicated person, open reasonably as well, and knows some basic SEO stuff. Now it's time to onboard them to the company. How would you start with that?
Yeah, so onboarding is critically important. So there's a couple of key things. Number one, if you can get some clear goals in early, that's important, both for you and for them. Because what happens is that when you hire a new person, it's very hard to be a new person in the company.
Yeah,
You don't know anything about anything.
Exactly.
You don't know where the share drive is. You don't know where the coffee machine is. You don't know who's who. You know nothing. So if you have some clear goals of, hey, your first month, this is your goal,
yeah,
right? And sometimes it's a project, sometimes it's a specific number, sometimes it's whatever. But having some initial clear goals for new hires can be very, very helpful, both for them to feel, oh, I'm clear on what I have to do, but also for you to actually be able to evaluate them. Because there's a good old saying that said, hire slow and fire fast. Sometimes when you realize someone is not cutting it, you want to let them go, right? But one of the big things is that if you don't have a clear expectation to what someone is supposed to do, how do you know if they're doing well?
exactly.
Right?
No,
And the thing is, if they don't know what they're supposed to do,
that's
and
even
I'm like,
bigger red
Effen,
flag.
you're not
Yeah.
doing a good job. And you're like,
Sorry, try
why
my
not?
best.
I'm doing my best,
Yeah.
right? But so the whole point of having some clear expectations in the beginning is that both it makes it clear for them, but it also, some people are very confident or very comfortable saying, hey, okay, this guy sucks, out the door. But some people are much more conflict averse. And they're much more like, oh, well, might not work out, might not be great. And just sitting down at the end of month one and end of month two, end of month three or whatever, and saying, hey, wait a minute, am I confident this person will make it? And just having that conversation with yourself is super, super helpful.
I always, whenever I hired someone, I worked with someone, it was clear in the first 2 weeks how things are going to work out in the future.
Yeah.
And even the first week or so, you could see it.
Very often.
Very often.
Again, it depends a little bit on the job. It depends a little, people learn differently, right?
Yeah.
Some people learn a little bit slower. Some people learn a little bit faster. But in the end of the day, a lot of things is about delivering results.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Exactly. So let's say you know what you're supposed to do in the company. And then it will be a matter of delegating the task in a proper way. And here is a problem that I'm currently facing, and I'm honest about it. I want to assign a new task to someone, and in our agency, we do have a lot of, let's say, new concepts that aren't taught in courses, or you cannot do Google search for them. And so I essentially need to write down big, gigantic text, maybe 500 words to explain it. On top of it, I need to record a 20 minutes video. And I need to essentially do it once a day. But if I think about it, if I can't do it myself, it will actually take less time. That's essentially the excuse I was giving myself, that if I do it myself, it will be actually faster than to assign it to someone else. How would you recommend going about this? The situation is that you think, okay, if I do it myself, it's going to be faster than assign it to the new guy who doesn't know how to do it. Will you record a video about this and like make it part of your SOP or a presentation for all team members?
What I would do if I was in that specific situation, I would personally I wouldn't do it SOP. I would do a video and explain it. There's two key things here. Number one is, in your company, it sounds like you're the person learning all this stuff, right? So what I try to be in my company is the dumbest guy. I don't want to learn all this stuff. I want to have people who are smarter than me who learn all the stuff.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, I can go and hire a smart SEO for 5K or 10K a month, but I don't want to work for that money, right? So the whole thing is I would much rather hire someone who go and do all the learning that you're doing so that I can run the business, right? So from a fundamental standpoint, in terms of how to delegate specifically, what I would do is, if there's a new concept, the starting point, the easiest route is for me not to learn in the first place. So if I see something, if I see the concept of a new concept and I say, we should learn that, I'll say, Efren, I would love for you to learn how to do this thing so you can teach the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So instead of me learning it, it will be you learning it. That's always better, right?
Yeah.
So, because the problem is when you're always a bottleneck, then you can only do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Right?
True that.
And the only way you can do more than that is by delegating the responsibility to other people. Mm-hmm. So in your specific situation, I would do it as simple as possible. So I'll record like a video. I'll go through it and say, hey, here's this stuff. I would like you to figure out how to do it. When they have done it 20 times, I will then ask them to document it as a process. Because everything else being equal, my time is more valuable than their time. Mm-hmm. And therefore, me spending a ton of time on doing video and documenting it is not worthwhile. However, me doing a really good video might be okay for them to figure out how to do it. And then when they've done it a bunch of times and they understand it, then they can document it. Because I would rather they spend the time documenting it than I spent the time documenting it.
Great point. And then I think, what would you think about the top, let's say, project management tools out there? Mm-hmm. Essentially, I'm not a big fan of emails for team management. Rather, I prefer Slack. You can ping someone, they respond within 5 minutes. You can chat with them. You can share screenshots. We can send videos. And on top of it, we do use Asana, although I've heard a lot of great things about ClickUp.
So my favorite project management tool is the one you use.
Asana?
No, the one you use. As in, honestly,
it doesn't matter.
They do the same stuff.
They do the same.
Right? They look slightly different. They have slightly different functionality. But then one tool do an upgrade and another tool doesn't have that. Like, in the big scheme of things, it generally doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
The big thing where most companies fail with project management tool is like, oh yeah, this team doesn't like doing it, so they're not doing it, and we are doing it. But someone or you have 5 people in the department and 3 of them is not using it and 2 of them are. Like, that's not okay, right? So as a company, if you choose to use a project management tool, make sure everyone uses it all the time. So a project management tool that only have half the stuff in there is useless.
Yeah.
Right? So honestly, it doesn't matter what you pick. Pick something, make sure there's good training for the team to use it, and make sure it's being used. Those are the core things. So for me, I mean, I know the tools that most of, like, in my 6 companies, we're using 2 or 3 different ones. But fundamentally, like, tools like Monday, tools like ClickUp, tools like Asana, I'll say a tool like Trello maybe is... some of the tools like Trello and Notion probably have a certain capacity. Like, if you go up to a 400 people company, Notion and Trello are probably not the right tools. But most of the other project management tools are relatively scalable, right? And it's similar with documenting processes. People are like, oh, what tool should I use? And I'm like, the one you actually use. If you're using Google Docs and Google Sheets, if people actually use it, use it. If you find some other great tool that's great at doing it, and you can make everyone use it, use that, right? It's not about the tool.
Great point. Not about it's not about the tool, it's how you use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so we got the project management part of it covered, I think. I think something that is actually more important. So, now we talked about hiring, we talked about how to manage a team properly. Sales, sales. And, it's essentially how you can grow an agency by having, essentially, I do grow it via referral. But some people, they have sales team, they do cold calling sometimes, cold outreach, or
Again, you can, like, if your only channel is referrals, you can only ever grow so much.
yeah.
Because
True.
if you want 400 new clients, you're not going to get them tomorrow from referrals.
Exactly, but maybe if your company is not ready to get big, maybe first.
I'm not saying you should grow 400 clients tomorrow. I'm just saying, like most lead channels have a certain limitation.
Limitations,
Right,
exactly.
just like SEO. I mean,
Exactly.
there's only so many people searching for something.
Yeah.
If people aren't searching for it, like...
Exactly. So, from the SEO agencies you spoke to, not just SEO agencies, let's call them online marketing agencies, digital marketing agencies. What would you say is the top 5 ways to get clients on a scalable basis, from which channels, and how they do it specifically?
Yeah. Number one is definitely referrals. Like, that's the
Yeah.
challenge I see for most. Because the thing is, most, particular SEOs, but also many social media companies, also many PPC agencies, they're not particularly great at the sales game. So referrals, when they have a customer that's happy, they often send them referrals. So that's one. Second thing is sometimes they actually use the skill they say they have. So sometimes they actually use SEO to get SEO client, believe it or not. Sometimes pay-per-click. My personal favorite is meeting people in person. Because
Exactly.
reality is the biggest thing, particularly in the world of SEO, is most companies have been scammed by 17 people already. And the thing is, someone who is in a difficult spot, or someone, like, getting a personal relationship with someone, you're way more likely to hire them. And one of the biggest things that I see, so many people are like, yeah, we only work with dentists. And my first question to them is, when were you last at a dentist conference? Or when did you last go to a dentist event? But here's the thing. If you go to a conference full of dentists, and you're the only person talking about SEO, which you will be, you're going to be surrounded by hundreds of your clients.
And that's the danger of being a nerd.
Exactly.
You don't know how to talk to people.
But this is the
Yeah.
thing. So many SEOs go to SEO conferences. And I say, what do you do? Oh, I work with roofers. I'm like,
Yeah.
when was the last time you worked?
SEOs are always like, I do SEO, I'm a consultant. Like, dude, here's the thing. There is a point in life that we need to accept you're adults. You do SEO, keep it as your skill set, but don't sacrifice your life on it. Try to grow it in a way that you're the best at it. You're trying to be the ultimate SEO expert in the world. But don't think like an SEO. Think of yourself as someone who's reliable, who's transparent, who's hardworking, and who also can speak to different individuals. So you can meet them in conferences and build friendship together. To like, you're not getting a customer, but I think you're getting a good friend who can be your client or partner too.
What I always say is, like, SEOs know a lot of SEOs. They think learning a quarter of a percentage more is what makes the difference.
Yes.
And their business skills are down here, and their management skills are down here. And the thing is, for them, spending a few hours, they could increase their business or management skills significantly.
Yeah.
But they spend a few hours trying to incrementally improve their SEO skills instead. So again, I love your point. Like I always say, when you look at SEO as a lifestyle, you're doing it wrong. SEO is a traffic source.
Yeah.
It's a traffic source.
If you do it as a lifestyle, you'll get fat. At the same time, you'll lose muscle. you get depressed, you'll get frustrated. It's essentially it's digital world, but we have real life. Like we are people. We are supposed to interact with each other. The algorithms are written in code, and unless you do want to be an AI, I would not recommend the lifestyle of an SEO. I would recommend the lifestyle of a individual, a human.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you know why I go to a lot of SEO conferences?
I mean, I know why James Dooley goes to a lot of SEO conferences, but not yours particularly.
Because a lot of my clients are SEOs.
Makes sense. But James Dooley, I don't think works with many SEOs, though.
He's actually trying to learn things.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that, to be honest with you, but he also likes to have fun as well.
Everyone should have fun sometimes.
Yeah, also you need to go to church sometimes.
Good. Do we?
Church.
Do we?
But today's Sunday, let's go after.
Oh, okay.
No? I think it's a good idea. Yeah, but maybe we'll bring James Dooley to church. And jokes besides, like, I think you gotta try it. Like 7 years ago, it was like I was a good SEO. Like I was a good SEO with like a fairly competent one as well. Like, and I was fairly dangerous as well in the sense of black hat sense. Although I didn't like make a lot of money that time at all, but I was like I could rank for any keyword I wanted to, using, let's say, the private link networks and also a combination of other things. But it was the moment that I started making money. It was exactly the time that I realized you need to be a person. You
You need to have life skills as well.
It's your life skills. It's who you are as an individual.
The single one thing that I recommend to most SEOs is learning better communication. And for me, it's public speaking. Like yourself, like I used to be extremely introvert.
Yeah.
Extremely afraid of talking to humans. And for me, the big thing that changed my mind was Toastmasters, public speaking.
James Dooley helped, I think.
No, he definitely did not.
Are you sure?
But Toastmasters was brilliant. And what I didn't realize at the time is public speaking is not just about standing on a stage. When you do public speaking, you learn how to be short and concise, right? Sometimes if you're just rambling on for hours in a conversation with someone, they're like, some customer where you're rambling on about traffic or keywords or whatever, and they just, it's going over their head, they're never going to hire you.
Yeah.
So learning to be short and concise, learning to utilize body language. Like again, many nerds, they're like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Right? But learning how to utilize body language and learning how to actually, make a solid point. So I learned a lot more from public speaking than public speaking itself. So for me, it was really a communication education course that have benefited me like so enormously ever since.
I think being related to what people currently have in their life is like another thing which is important. Let's say you go to SEO conference and you start talking about AI for PPC, but the conference is essentially SEO. No one cares about what you're saying because people have different issues. And I realized that when I was actually attending a sales call, the client was essentially a local company in the US. This story is like from 3 years ago. And the problem they were having was actually related to leads and conversions, essentially, sales revenue. But in our presentation, we actually showed traffic forecasting. And they didn't care about that at all. But they are essentially what...
Most customers don't.
Absolutely. But at the time, I was working with a lot of SaaS companies, and traffic was the main KPI that SaaS companies do track, to be honest with you. It's something that I realize, especially for local businesses, which I don't work with anymore. It's about how many phone calls you can get for them. That's all. They just want the phone ringing. They don't care about the number of clicks to a site.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I learned was to understand the client's needs.
Yeah.
If you like mention something, rambling about something that no one cares about, then good job. Like good luck. You're not going to win. And it's the same if public is speaking as well, or like having a sales call. You need to identify the problem. You need to also provide like description about it, and also your solution to how you can fix it. And the problem I often see the problem needs to be something that the client has seen evidence of it happening. So it shouldn't be something unrelated to, let's say PPC account got suspended, but and revenue is down. Client knows this, and you're like saying, okay, maybe your UX is bad, and this is danger of, for example, audits. Sometimes, if you run audits, you may encounter correlation, but not causation.
I love it. I love it. Every time you see people do big UX changes and it looks way better, and the conversions drop by half.
Exactly. Like especially for like smaller companies, like local businesses, HVAC companies. Back when I was working with these individuals, we were seeing like every time you actually provide a more optimized modern design, like the conversions are down like a lot.
Yeah.
And what we found was the more simple looking it is, and also it does have the image of the contractors and the individuals in a low quality format, meaning like with like a normal T-shirt how a contractor wears. You know those guys with Trump hat and like some beard, some bushy beard. And like they always had the best conversion rate compared to, let's say, something shiny, something stylish, which is needed if you are a shoe company.
Sure.
Or a fashion company. But to your audience, you are essentially, they're looking for a contractor, not a fashion influencer.
Yeah.
I think the same logic applies when we're talking about like matching with the audience's expectations as well.
Yeah. Agreed.
Then the next question is, how would you actually start by structuring the company? A flat structure, a hierarchy structure, or depends on what type of agency you have, essentially?
99.9% of companies on planet Earth are structured the same way.
Yeah.
If you're an SEO and love looking at data, you should look at that, and that tells you exactly how to structure your company. CEO, sales, marketing, operations, finance, and potentially tech. It's very simple, right? So again, when you're starting a company, it's always a bit messy because you have one or two or three people, or there's a lot of people doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, my favorite when I start a new company is I draw out an org chart, and in the beginning I put myself CEO, myself sales, myself marketing, myself operations, and myself finance. Say, okay, who's the first hire here, right?
Exactly.
And that's how you build it up. So I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen one or two companies do okay with a different structure, but literally 99.9% of companies operate the exact same way, and there's a reason for it. It works. So again, same with SEO, right? If you see something that everyone is doing that works, I mean, you can try and do other things, but why do it the complicated way?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Mads, I really appreciate your time, and looking forward. You're speaking tomorrow at Chiang Mai SEO event.
Speaking tomorrow. Will be good fun.
Will be fun. I'll be attending.
Excellent. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. And everyone, have a great day. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Matt, take care of yourself.